off as a regular guy.
But when they ran the name Arthur Shawcross through the police computer, they discovered that he had killed in the past.
Put his name in. The very first thing that pops up is burglary, arson, manslaughter. Well, now we know. We got a player.
Without any evidence to charge him with a crime, the police tried to learn as much from him voluntarily as they could.
The whole purpose of this interview was to elicit information. Made it clear to him that he's free to leave. You know, we just need to talk.
Shawcross was more than happy to oblige.
And they talked to me for half the night and didn't arrest me or nothing.
The police took their time with Shawcross, asking about his childhood. He said he grew up in Brownville, New York, a small town near the Canadian border.
Never really had anything bad to say about his parents, or his family, or his upbringing.
After being drafted into the Army in 1967, he completed a tour of duty in Vietnam.
And I went from Saigon, I went up to Pleiku, Central Highlands in Vietnam, and I went from Pleiku, I transferred, went to the 1st of the 14th Infantry to Kon Tum, Vietnam.
Eventually, police asked him about the manslaughter charge. Shawcross hesitated, but then admitted that he had killed a young boy and girl in 1972. He had served 15 years in prison and was paroled to Rochester in 1987.
He attempted to portray himself as very sad for what he had done, and he knew that this was a real bad thing.
Shawcross also talked about his current life in Rochester. It turned out the car he was driving was owned by his mistress, Clara Neal, who worked at the Wedgwood nursing home. He was also married to a woman named Rose, his fourth wife, whom he had met while in prison.
I was writing to a couple of teenage girls, and they were writing, then they introduced me to their mother, and I started writing the mother, and then the mother came to visit.
Shawcross began living with Rose as soon as he was released from prison, and they eventually married. He was now working at night, chopping salads at a local food service company. But what really got the investigators' attention was when he talked about his favorite fishing spots.
He's telling us about Genesee River Gorge. Well, we've got a body there. He's talking about another place. Well, we've got a body there. He likes to fish here. We had a body there.
During the interview, the only time Shawcross became agitated was when they asked if he saw prostitutes.
He would slam his fist on the desk and get very angry, and he would just erupt. He said, I don't do prostitutes. I don't hang out with prostitutes. He said, I've never been with a prostitute.
After 8 hours of questioning, the police were forced to let him go.
I certainly didn't believe at that point there was what the law calls probable cause to arrest him.
They took his picture and dropped him off at his apartment late that evening. They had already searched it during the interrogation, and it was now under 24-hour surveillance. Overnight, detectives showed his picture around to prostitutes on Lyle Avenue. One girl picked him out immediately as being a regular of hers. She knew him as Mitch.
I bought a jacket on the back of the coat, 2-inch letters on the back. It said Mitch. You know, guys, people call me Mitch. You know, I just waved to him.
The next day, 2 investigators approached Shawcross on the street and asked if he wouldn't mind answering more questions.
I really thought at that point he was going to lawyer up. And when he didn't, I was never more surprised and relieved. If he lawyers up, end game. We can arrest him. Maybe. Can we make it stick? I don't know.
Shawcross got in their car, and they drove to the place where the prostitute said she and Shawcross had sex.
I said, do you recall having sex with a prostitute at this location? He said, oh yeah, just once, I forgot.
Having caught Shawcross in a lie, the investigators headed to the Rochester Police Department to interrogate him further. On the way, they passed the area where Shawcross had picked up the prostitute who had ID'd him. They told Shawcross they knew more.
And I again informed him, this is where you picked up a prostitute, and she's cooperating with us, and that she also saw you with Elizabeth Gibson on the 11 hours before she was killed.
Elizabeth Gibson was a prostitute whose body was discovered just a few weeks earlier in the woods by a hunter. The detectives bore down on Shawcross.
Explain how you were seen with this girl, Elizabeth Gibson. 11 hours later, her body was found. We had paint chips at the scene We have tire impressions. At that point, he was asked if anybody else was involved in this, namely his wife, Rose.
They started threatening my wife and started threatening Clara. Finally, I just gave up.
He puts his head down and he goes, she's not involved.
After only a half hour of questioning, Arthur Shawcross admitted killing Elizabeth Gibson.
He had strangled her, and he said the reason being is they were having sex and she scratched his eyes. And he got carried away and suffocated her, strangled her. He didn't mean to kill her, he said, but he was irate because she had scratched his eyes.
But it would take 4 more hours till Shawcross came completely clean. Police confronted him with a matching earring from another victim found in his car. Shawcross cracked.
I was getting tired. I just getting a big knot in my chest, and I said, yeah, think to myself, it's over with.
The cops gave Shawcross a stack of photographs of dead and missing women.
And he went through them like a deck of cards, and he'd sort them out and show us the ones that he was responsible for killing.
When it was over, there were 11 pictures in Shawcross's pile.
After I admitted to the 11, it was like a big weight fell off me.
Almost as shocking as the number of victims was Shawcross's lack of emotion.
He showed no remorse. I don't believe he had any conscience at all. Nothing. We asked him, could you give us a reason why you did this? And his reason was just taking care of business.
With the Genesee River killer finally off the street, the entire city of Rochester breathed a sigh of relief.
We left the room, and there were probably 40 police officers, commanders and officers, that had tears in their eyes.
We are here today to formally announce the arrest.
On January 5th, 1990, officials in Rochester, New York, called a press conference to announce the arrest of the killer who had terrorized their city for 2 years.
This investigation has resulted in the arrest of Shawcross in 8 of the murders, and 3 additional murders will be presented to the Monroe and Wayne County grand juries.
There was satisfaction that all the hard police work had finally paid off.
They didn't see a Thanksgiving. They didn't see a Christmas. They didn't see their families for days on end, but they brought the killer to justice.
But there were hard questions as well. Shawcross had killed 2 children. Instead of being locked up for life, he was out walking the streets of Rochester 15 years later.
I get tears in my eyes when I think about it. How can a guy kill 2 children and still be walking free? It's obscene.
As his trial loomed ahead, his personal history was examined closely to ascertain his life story.
We were able to obtain his school records back from Watertown, his military records, his records from the correctional facilities in which he had been incarcerated. And to me, what it painted a picture of is somebody who was antisocial, somebody who was a violent individual.
I start sweating.
He also underwent a battery of psychiatric interviews to try and make some sense of his grisly crimes.
Just that funny feeling, and I strangled with one hand.
He told shocking stories of sexual abuse and cannibalism. But his accounts didn't always match up, and some questioned their validity.
Do guys like this lie? Absolutely.
Shawcross claims that starting at a young age, he was sexually abused by his mother and one of her friends.
Things happened in my house when I was 4, 7, 9, between my mother and who I thought was my aunt, was my mother's girlfriend. Right?
He also claims he had sex with his sisters.
Me and Jeannie, we were 9 or 10, and I'd do things with Jeannie. I did it once with Donna, once with my cousin Sandra, a couple of times with my cousin Linda.
He wrote to one of his psychiatrists to have engaged in sexual acts with a wide variety of not only people but animals.
But all of Shawcross's family members have vigorously denied the allegations.
He claimed to be abused by a wide variety of individuals. The only one's word for that was Arthur Shawcross.
The eldest of 4 children, Shawcross began showing signs of trouble during his childhood, evidence to defense psychiatrist Dorothy Lewis of abuse at home.
Throughout his childhood, there are allusions to his running away from home. The abuse at